I tell people I stopped riding after midnight because of safety. It sounds practical. Fewer drunks, fewer fights, fewer kids vaping into your face. The truth is stranger, and it starts with a shift swap I never should have taken, and a bus I never should have boarded. I work nights at a hospital lab side running samples between floors when the tube system jams, and calming interns who think their patient will die if potassium isn't back in 8 minutes. Double shifts happen. You drink bad coffee, you tell yourself you're 23 again, and you missed the last train by 4 minutes. That night, it was exactly 12:01 when I reached the ground level doors and stepped into air that smelled like rain even though the sky was bare. The night bus stop sits across from a shuttered deli and a pawnbroker with a flickering neon guitar. The city calls it the N13, though drivers and insomniacs just say the midnight. It runs a bent figure 8 from the river to the old depot and back, giving everyone one last pass at getting home before the city turns its face to the wall. I've taken it dozens of times. I never thought about it. A single bus idled at the curb with hazard lights winking like slow blinks. The head sign read N13 Depot, midnight in amber letters that seemed dimmer than usual, as if the bulbs were saving themselves. I jogged the last few steps and waved. The doors sighed open. The driver didn't look at me. You notice when drivers look through you. They do it when they're fighting with dispatch or bracing for a fair argument. This driver, older woman, cap pulled low, jaw like a line cut with a ruler, kept her eyes on the black, smudged glass of the windshield, as if the street were a person she owed something to. I tapped my card. The reader chimed twice, an accepted tone followed by a second, softer note I'd never heard, like the device had changed its mind. On the little screen, 0 o'clock in blocky digits, no dollar amount. I glanced up. It took. Her mouth moved like the idea of a smile, tried to lift, and failed. Sit. We're not stopping long. The bus interior smelled like wet wool and that old heater smell all transit vehicles have in winter. Only it was July. The lights seemed a fraction too low, and I had that sense you get stepping from a bright sidewalk into a bar that lag, like your eyes haven't caught up yet. There were a few riders. A man in a grey suit held a briefcase in his lap with both hands, like it contained something that might jump. A teenage girl hugged a backpack that bulged like it had more than clothes in it. An older lady in a coat too heavy for the weather sat near the middle doors with a coin purse clamped in one fist. None of them glanced up. None of them had earbuds. No one had the slack phone-lit posture you expect. They stared at the black squares of the windows as if something outside was worth it. I took a seat 2 rows from the back, aisle side. Habit. The bus pulled away with that heavy, rolling sigh and a groan from the rear suspension like someone old getting up from a chair. There's a rhythm to night buses. Heavy stops near bars, light ones near small apartment blocks where the people who work early already sleep. But the N13 rolled past the cluster of bouncers on 9th without a bell, slowed at an empty corner, and opened its doors anyway. Cold air slipped in, the kind that carries the metal taste of a river. I felt the bus lean slightly as if weight had shifted. No one moved. The driver closed the doors. We pulled away. The next stop, same thing. Empty sidewalk, doors hiss, a draft. A tiny sway as if someone had stepped on and walked past me. My skin pebbled. I rubbed my forearms harder than necessary and told myself to stop being dramatic. Tired brains invent things. You can catch your reflection and think it's a stranger. You can hear the bus settle and decide its footsteps. At Franklin, the man with the briefcase stood. He didn't press the bell. He didn't signal. He just stood and walked toward the front, moving the way people move when they know exactly where the gaps are. The driver opened the doors as he reached them. He stepped out, didn't look back, didn't adjust his briefcase. I watched through the window as the bus pulled away, expecting to see him on the sidewalk. I didn't. He was simply gone, as if the bus had eaten him, and the city had no record of him ever being there. "You're tired," I whispered to myself, grimacing at how movie-silly it sounded out loud. We turned onto Alder, the road that curves along the cut of the river. The streetlights there throw islands of sodium orange on the black water. In each reflection I could see our bus, a smudge of yellow sliding along the river's surface, and the pale coin of the moon broken into slivers. The teenage girl turned slightly as we passed the pedestrian bridge. I thought she was looking at me until I realized she was looking at the dark glass across from me, using it like a mirror, eyes fixed on something just over my shoulder. I turned. The seat beside me was empty. It also wasn't. If you've ever put your hand over a stovetop that's off, you know the oddness of warmth that is only the memory of heat. The reverse is true. There was a temperature to that seat that felt like it had been empty for a long time, and simultaneously like someone had just stood up. It was colder than the air and heavier. That's the only way I can put it. As if the vinyl had a person-shaped pressure dent and refused to forget. I slid closer to the aisle. I pulled the yellow cord to request my stop at Harbor. The bell didn't chime. The stop-requested light stayed dark. The driver didn't glance up. I pulled again, hard enough to make the cord bite my fingers. Nothing. I raised my voice. "Harbor, please." The driver's cap didn't lift. We sailed past the corner where I always came down the steps and jogged across before the walk signal died. I half stood. "Ma'am, Harbor." Her voice, when it came, was almost gentle. "Not yet." There are four words that can tilt your world, and they aren't all "I love you" or "it's malignant." Sometimes they're simple and inexplicable, and delivered by a stranger, driving a vehicle full of people who never blink. I sat down slowly. The teenage girl hugged her backpack tighter like she was bracing. The older lady near the middle doors loosened her grip on the coin purse, then tightened it again, as if practicing being a person who could let go. My phone had no service. It happens in pockets downtown old buildings. Narrow streets, but the icon was a clean, blank triangle. No bars. Like the world had decided to skip me. The time on the lock screen read 12:04. I watched it for a minute, and it didn't change. When it finally did, it skipped to 12:19 with a hiccup like a cough. We took a right where the N13 never turns. Every bone in my commuting body felt the wrongness of it, like putting a shoe on the wrong foot. We went down Mercy, which did at the old ferry terminal. People don't ride the ferry anymore. The city built a bridge farther down and left the terminal to pigeons and weather. The bus eased to a stop with a soft kiss of brake pads. The doors opened. Air came in off the water, cold and clean and older than anything with an engine. Beyond the wide, dark lot, a thin chain-link fence leaned toward the river like it had given up trying to stand straight. The driver didn't announce the stop. The teenage girl stood, finally, and walked off, clutching her backpack to her sternum like a shield. The older lady followed. Neither of them looked at each other. Neither of them hesitated. The moment each crossed the threshold, the air inside the bus got a fraction warmer. I stayed. I don't have a good explanation for why. Fear is one. Confusion is another. Tiredness makes cowards of us all. But I also felt something I'd call recognition, if I were being honest. It felt like standing outside a hospital room door and knowing your name is about to be called, and hating it, and still starting to stand. The driver closed the doors and shifted the bus into gear. We pulled away from the black lot and the leaning fence and the blank terminal where 100 people have taken last looks over the years and promised to try harder. The river slid along beside us like a thing with its own breath. 2 stops later, in a neighborhood of shuttered bodegas and sleeping cars, we slowed again for no one. The doors sighed. The bus leaned. A man in work boots I hadn't noticed rose from a front seat and stepped out into nothing. I looked at the driver. She kept her eyes forward. Her hands on the wheel were pale and still. "What route is this?" I asked. "N13, she said. "It runs through." "It doesn't go this way." "It does tonight." There was no push in her voice. She sounded like someone performing a necessary task, counting pills into a paper cup, washing a body before the funeral. We crossed Janus, my old street, without stopping. I watched my building blur by, my windows black, my curtains a paler shape. Every nerve in me wanted to stand and pull the cord until the plastic snapped and the bell yelled my demand to the whole machine. The cord sat slack and quiet, like it had already given all it could give to other people on other nights. The bus turned onto Sable, which no bus takes because the city put in those stupid concrete islands that make cars scrape their rims. We glided through them like they'd been painted on. There's a church on Sable that leaves a light on the statue of Mary all night. The light was out. The statue was a deeper shadow in the dark, her hands empty and opened, as if asking strangers to show what's inside their pockets. "I need to get off," I said. "You will," the driver said, "when it's yours." I laughed. It came out small. "What does that mean?" "You'll know." She tapped the brakes lightly the way you pat a dog you don't own. Most do. "Do you know me?" "No," she said. "But I know the look." "What look?" She didn't answer. I realized that if I wanted to see her eyes, I'd have to stand and lean over the yellow line where the taped notice warns riders not to stand. I didn't. Every instinct told me the space behind that line belonged to her and something else, and that my safety depended on respecting it. We passed the high school. I hadn't been back since graduation. The track lights were off, but I could still see the chalky oval, the ghosts of lanes drawn and smudged, the place where a boy named Theo tripped senior year and broke his collarbone and cried and hid his face from us like he'd done something shameful. I thought about him for the first time in a decade, felt briefly the hot embarrassment of being 17 and failing publicly. The bus hummed. Content. "Do you take this route every night?" I asked. For a while, the driver said, "It's not forever." That answer felt like a flick on the forehead. I squinted at her profile. "What does that mean?" "People think forever is longer than it is." I didn't have a response for that. My throat itched. I swallowed and tasted ash, and for a second my brain filled with the picture I didn't want. A bus with its belly up like a beetle. Glass glittering in the road. Orange light. Someone yelling, "Where are the others?" I blinked and it was gone. The road was just road again. We turned onto Barlow by the cemetery. Of course we did. The city plants maple trees along the fence, and in summer they make a black wall. But at night you can see the pale squares of stones like teeth. I counted them because looking away felt worse. The bus slowed. The doors opened. My skin tightened. Cold came in with the smell of cut grass and wet stone, and that sweet rotten smell that makes you think of wet leaves and old flowers. Nobody stood. Nobody moved. The driver waited. Something moved in the corner of my eye in the bus mirror, the long one above the aisle. For a second I saw a bus full of people, not the 4 or 5 I had catalogued, but bodies in every other seat. Some with heads bowed like sleepers, some turned toward the doors. My heart thumped high in my chest like it was trying to escape. I looked at the actual aisle. It was nearly empty. The mirror was wrong, or the mirror was right, and the aisle was the lie. "Stop," I said without meaning to. It came out a plea. The driver closed the doors. We rolled on. I lost track of where we were. The bus made a turn I didn't recognize, and we came up on a row of warehouses with steel roll-up doors, each tagged with the same 3 letters in different hands, like a signature you sign over and over on a bad day. Someone had left one door half up, and a yellow triangle of light spilled onto the street like the door was peeing. My mouth did an ugly twist, because that's how my brain works when I'm scared. Dumb jokes, wrong images. We stopped. The doors opened. The bus leaned. I heard the click of hard heels. No one stood. The driver's hands tensed on the wheel just enough to show tendons. "What are they?" I asked, not sure if I meant the riders or the stops or the driver or myself. "Same as you," she said. "Somebody who missed one." "One what?" "Stop," she said, as if the answer was so obvious it hardly needed saying. It landed harder than I wanted. The memory opened in me like a bruise you forget until you bump it. A phone call I'd silenced at 12:03 a year ago because I was stocking the lab fridge and it was freezing my fingers, and the caller ID said Mom, and I didn't want to be told again that she was fine and the home was kind and I should visit on my day off. I told myself I'd call back at lunch. Between 12:03 and 12:27, a nurse at Hillside found her on the floor beside her bed, eyes open, mouth open as if surprised. They said it was peaceful. They said it happens fast. The voicemail from 12:03 is still on my phone. I have never listened to it. My mother's hands were always cold. She kept coins in her nightstand like a kid. We turned onto Hillside. It doesn't feel like fate. It feels like being pushed gently from behind. "Please," I said. "Don't." "Doors open," the driver said. The bus had in fact opened its doors. I hadn't felt it. The air didn't change. No cold, no grass, no river. Just that sterile lemoned hallway smell I have lived in for years. The light outside was hospital light, flat and unwavering. Down the hallway, a night nurse wheeled a cart that squeaked every third rotation. "If I get off," I asked, "what happens?" "You see what you need to see," she said. "Or you don't. That's not up to me." "Will I get back on?" "Most do." The driver's mouth did that almost smile again. "Some take a later one. And if I don't go, then it will circle back," she said. "Eventually." I looked down at my hands, at the crescent moons my nails had pressed into. My own palms. I stood. My body did it before my brain decided. It knew the choreography of doors and stepping down, and the pain in my knee from a bike fall at 19, and the hum of fluorescent bulbs, and the tiny shiver in a cartwheel. I walked to the front. I paused at the yellow line, and for the first time the driver looked at me. Her eyes were not dramatic. They were pale and practical and tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "Take this," she said, and handed me a small, rectangular slip. It looked like the old transfer tickets we used to get before the cards. Thin paper, grey blue, perforated edge. On it in clean block letters: transfer in midnight, expiris morning. In the corner, instead of a route number, an O or a 0 or a circle. I couldn't tell. "Do I need to show it to get back on?" "No," she said. "Just don't lose it." I stepped down. The air tasted like bleach. The doors closed behind me with that soft, surgical kiss. I looked back at the driver. She watched the windshield again. The bus didn't pull away. I walked the hall. The tile shone like teeth. The nurse looked up, tired, friendly, and said, "You're late." I didn't argue. She pointed with her chin to my mother's door. "There are some things I won't write here. Not because they're sacred, everything is vulgar and the wrong light, but because putting them down gives them a shape that feels untrue." The room was small. My mother's hands were colder than usual. There was a coin on the nightstand, a nickel, and a paper cup with 2 pills still in it. Her phone lay face down, plugged into the wall like a child sleeping under a blanket. I picked it up and pressed the button. The lock screen showed the missed call to me at 12:03, on a day in a month I remember better than birth dates. I put the phone back exactly as it had been because some animal part of me believed in punishment through precision. I sat for a while and said a lot of things I should have said a year before, and a lot I shouldn't, and a few that belonged to other people's stories. My chest hurt like I had run, and my mouth tasted like a penny under the tongue. When I came back out, the bus sat where I had left it. The doors opened as I approached. I stepped in with a stupid, teenage relief like arriving at the right party. After failing to find it twice, I showed the driver the transfer like a tourist. She didn't look. I kept it anyway. Paper proof makes you feel less crazy. The bus was not emptier. That's the only way I can write it. It held the same number of bodies it had held before, if you counted with your eyes. If you counted with your skin, it was lighter. I sat, I pulled the cord, and the bell gave a small, polite ding that sounded like a silver spoon tapped against a thin glass dot. We took the right way this time. Harbour came, and the bus knelt, and I got off into the ordinary stink of the fish place vent and the sweet, human smell of stale beer from the bar on the corner. The bus pulled away. I turned to watch it take the hill, its windows gold squares, sliding past the sleeping street. The sign on the back read midnight. I walked home. I put the transfer in my wallet behind my driver's license. I slept like I'd been thrown into a well. The next afternoon, because I am the kind of person who needs to turn bruises into documentation, I called Mia. She works dispatch and has saved me more than once by telling me where a bus actually is, instead of where the app thinks it is. I asked her to pull the N13 logs for last night, around 12:30. She made a sound that is half laugh and half warning. Why? I left my jacket on the bus, I lied. Wanted to know which vehicle to call. You in your jackets. She clicked keys. Let me see. Okay, that's weird. The N13 didn't run after 10. Power outage at the depot. They staged from the east yard, but nothing left your side. I was on it. Maybe you were on the N15. No, I said. I saw the sign. Send me a pic of your transfer. I did. She texted back a question mark and then, cute. Where'd you get that? An antique store. It was last night. Transfers are digital now, she said. Patient is a teacher, correcting a child. We don't print those. Haven't for years. She sent me a screenshot of my card history. At 0 o'clock, it showed entry recorded agency, N, and a circle I couldn't tap for more detail. No route, no vehicle, no station. Just that clean, unhelpful, oh I mean. The system hiccups, Mia said. But this, where'd you say you got off Harbour? She was quiet. Then, I'll call you back. She didn't. I called her. It went to voicemail. The next day she sent a single line. I'm not supposed to talk about this on my work phone. I waited for the jokey follow-up, the bit about alien buses or prank drivers. It didn't come. A week later, an envelope arrived from City Transit Violations. Inside, a notice that I had failed to tag off my ride at 0 o'clock, and the fare had been maximized. A fine. I sat at the tiny kitchen table and laughed hard enough to make my ribs hurt. They had billed me for getting off the bus that didn't run. I paid it. Stupidity tax, haunting fee, whatever you want to call it. I haven't ridden the midnight since. If my shift runs late, I bite the bullet and call a car or I walk. Once, maybe 2 months after, I was up late reading at the window and heard a bus exhale at the curb outside. No route stops there. The street was empty. I looked anyway. A bus stood under the streetlight with its hazards winking, the slow blink I recognized now as the time between breaths. The head sign read nothing. A smear of pale moved in the mirror. I turned off my lamp and sat in the dark until the bus sighed again and left. I still have the transfer. It lives in my wallet like a pressed leaf. It expires. Morning line has faded, but if you tilt it, you can still see the O in the corner. Sometimes, when I am tempted to be cruel to myself, I take it out and hold it over the stove to see if heat reveals a hidden message like those spy books said. It doesn't. It always smells faintly like wet wool. If you want a neat explanation, I don't have one. People say there was a crash once. A night route took a turn too fast by the ferry and went into the lot, and the driver did everything a person could do and still couldn't do enough. And afterward they named a training after her and changed a rule and said it would never happen again. People say a bus still makes the run sometimes when the night is the right kind of empty, and a driver who isn't on the roster leans forward and watches a windshield that's really a kind of water and lets people off where they missed their chance. I didn't hear those stories before. I hear them now because your ears change. If you end up at a stop after midnight and the bus that pulls up feels colder than the street and the driver doesn't look at you and the card reader sounds like it changed its mind, get on if you're ready and don't if you're not. If you pull the cord and the bell stays silent, it's not because the cord doesn't work. If the driver tells you not yet, sit down. If the bus opens its doors where it shouldn't and the air that comes in smells like the thing you're trying not to think about, stand up if you can. If you're handed a transfer that says expires, morning, keep it. If anyone asks you later how you got home, say you took the last bus. And if someone you love calls you in the middle of the night, and you're stocking a fridge and your hands are cold, and your life is ordinary, and your future is nothing like the one you had planned, answer. Answer, even if your voice cracks and your words are stupid. Answer, because some stops don't circle back. Answer, because buses get old and glass breaks, and even the drivers who know the road by memory can't do everything. Answer, because sometimes something waits with the patience of water, and the bus will halt at a place that isn't on the route, and you'll step down and the doors will close, and you'll say the thing you should have said, and you'll get back on, and the driver will merge like she's entering a current, not a lane, and the city will move around you the way sleep moves around the body that finally lets itself have it. I don't ride after midnight anymore. I don't need to. But some nights, when the house quiets and the refrigerator changes pitch and the dark turns its face toward the river, I hear air brakes 2 blocks over and a bell that sounds like a spoon against a glass, and I hope the person sitting 2 rows from the back stands when it's theirs. I hope they keep their transfer. I hope the driver watches the windshield and smiles the way she almost smiled at me when she said, "Not forever." If you see me at a stop some night and the bus doors open and I don't get on, don't take it as fear, take it as respect. The bus will come for you when it's your turn. And when you board, look at the seats as if they are remembering. Sit where the air is heavy and let your hands be cold. When the doors open where they shouldn't go, and Cliff, when you come back, don't try to thank the driver. She has a route to finish and miles to go and people to let off who were never there.